Good evening, everyone. It is Monday, June 11th, 2018. It's the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on Periscope and YouTube, restreaming through Restream. Simulcasting through dumbass. All right. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. And good evening, Buckman. How are you? Good evening, Jen Johnson. You made the beginning. That's awesome. I'm a little late, so that makes sense. We have a lot I want to talk about tonight, and some of the stuff is going to be not necessarily our normal fare. I have a stuff I definitely want to talk about some technical stuff tonight to get you guys up to speed, so that we as we dig deeper into the potential sovereign debt crisis here, that you guys have an understanding of what it is that I'll be talking about as we go forward, because it's really important that we define terms, as it were. So it's really important. But let's talk about the basic stuff to get started with. So here we are. It's that day. Trump and Kim are going to meet in Singapore. If they haven't met already, or they're about to meet, or something like that, isn't it? Because they're something like 10 or 11 hours behind us. So let's hope that everything goes really well. Let us hope that John Bolton is not setting the agenda for Donald Trump. Let us hope that Trump goes into this meeting with the right attitude. I hope he doesn't, to be honest with you. I mean, because seriously, that is not what I want representing American food. I mean, it is representative of American food, but yeah, I mean, they're ahead of us. I remember I used to do a thing with a guy out in Vietnam, and so he was literally 12 hours behind me. So my day would start at with him at 11 o'clock my night. So so they start in 48 minutes. Okay, so they're gonna start while I'm on the air tonight, which will be kind of fun. So yeah, I mean, to me, this whole thing is a real great opportunity. I'm gonna stay relatively positive here. I don't want to. The last thing I want to do is sit here and be negative about it, because that's crazy. So Joanne just said that she popped into MSNBC for about 10 minutes and was shocked at how hostile the coverage was. I'm not, Joanne. They're not interested in that. Okay, I've been saying for a while now, and I know that those of you who follow the newsletter, you know that I covered this in May's issue explicitly, where I said, look, Trump doesn't hold a lot of great cards here. This peace process is being driven by the Koreans. And I'm not taking anything away from Trump. He just doesn't have a lot of cards to play here. If he wants to create any kind of deal, he's going to have to mostly accept whatever the Koreans put on the table, because they're the ones driving this, right? The Washington establishment does not want peace in Korea. They want this as an open wound. They always have. They want these conflicts to stay frozen in time forever. John Bolton has done everything he could to stop the summit from even happening. And of course, MSNBC is in pure never Trump land. I mean, it does make them look really bad, Joanne, because it makes MSNBC look terrible, because what it says is that they're purely agenda driven. All they care about is making Trump look bad. They're now arguing against a denuclearized Korean peninsula because Donald Trump is the one doing the negotiating. This is what winning the culture war looks like, guys. This, De Niro standing up there at the Tonys last night and running his mouth, Samantha Bee running her mouth. This is what winning looks like. Okay? We've got Bill Kristol and MSNBC out there crying in their beer because Donald Trump is sitting down with Kim Jong-un to deal with one of the potential nuclear hotspots in the world. That, look, the big threat here is not the heads of state making a terrible decision. The real threat posed by nuclear weapons is the Dr. Strangelove effect. It is some fucking ideologue taking it upon himself to push the moment to its crisis point. Georgia, I will see what he does. Georgia's asking me whether I'm back on the Trump train. I'm not back on or back off. I am where I've always been, which is to say that I'm happy with what I see domestically, but his foreign policy is still insane. If he comes out of the summit and with a deal in place that doesn't destroy North Korea in the process, I'll be very happy. But I reserve the right to get on and off the train whenever the fuck I want. Because all that matters is results. All that matters is what he does, not what he talks about. He went there. The summit is good. It's an unqualified success. Just getting the United States to sit down at the table and talk at this level. Exactly. I'm with Joanne. I'm on the peace train wherever it takes us. I mean, if you want, I'll start playing 10,000 Maniacs for you. I mean, that's what I want. Okay? I prefer their version of Cat Stevens. Because it's the one I heard first, believe it or not. And I love Natalie Merchant's voice, even though I can't stand her politics. So this is an unqualified great opportunity, and we should applaud regardless of who we are. MSNBC should be applauding Donald Trump taking this step today. CNN should be applauding this. The deep state and the Obama administration holdover should be applauding this. George Soros should be applauding this. Notice that he's not. He's over there in Europe complaining bitterly that he's losing everything he ever built over there. Right. Nobody ever got this far. Well, it's because nobody ever wanted to get this far. Love or freedom is the point. I mean, one of the things that Trump loves to do is to take on, as Halsey and I've talked about many times, Trump likes to take on problems that other people say are impossible. He likes to cleave Gordian knots. And the truth of the matter is it's something that I wrote for an article that I've got coming out on strategic culture on Wednesday. I'll give you a little preview of what I was talking about, because I bring up the fact that Kissinger, the Henry Kissinger, was advising Trump about a year and a half ago about what to do in Ukraine and some other things. And a couple of stories leaked in the media about what potential deals were on the table. But it was typical Kissinger in basically trying to get Putin to agree to nothing good after an egregious American provocation. And I say, good evening, Tillman. And I say, guys like Kissinger live for this realpolitik garbage where they endlessly complicate things by endlessly creating little provocations and little problems and tying things up with legal challenges here and this challenge there and putting troops over here and they do all this stuff for no other reason than to bind everything up. And then eventually, like a great game of chess where you've got this guy, you bind down the pawn, then you bind down all the pieces so that you can't move anywhere. And then there's one potential move, and then you get your win. And the thing is, they live for this stuff. And at the same time that I was working on that article yesterday, I was scrolling through my Twitter feed, and somebody put up a great quote by Nietzsche, which I'd never seen before. And it's a quote by Nietzsche that said, "They muddy the waters to make them appear deep." And this is the situation with a lot of the geopolitical situation today. That Trump is just looking at these geopolitical Gordian knots and just saying they're not that tough. We've made them more complicated than they need to be. We've made them difficult when really all we have to do is sit down and pressure the situation to a crisis point, sit down and then negotiate. Okay, fine. Where I have a problem with Trump is how he's handling the Middle East. Never really had a problem with how he's handled North Korea. Was I a little scared during all the Sturm und Drang? Sure. Everybody should be scared during the Sturm und Drang. Okay, when everybody's threatening to lob nuclear missiles at each other, you should be a little scared. You should question whether or not this is the right course of action. If it all works out in the end, great. But I was about 85% sure it was never going to get to the point where anybody lobbed nukes at each other. Maybe 90%. A little bit of me was scared. Every once in a while, I would come on here and I would voice that fear. But for the most part, I think I always kept a level head saying, look, the most likely outcome here is that no one is going to lob missiles at each other. Trump doesn't dare militarily attack North Korea. And North Korea doesn't dare lob a nuclear missile at anybody. It's all theater. And once everybody got past that point, and behind the scenes, they're all negotiating for how they can make this thing work. That's where we are today. And so I give Trump a lot of credit for just being willing to like pick up the friggin' sword of Damocles and whack the friggin' and hold it over the heads of all these geopolitical experts and say, you're all fucking wrong. This is not that complicated. This is not that tough. And when you pressure people hard enough, you get outcomes. When you pressure people hard enough, you get Justin Trudeau misapplying his eyebrow glue. I mean, if there's a better metaphor for what happens than when you put people under intense pressure that they're not capable of handling, Eyebrowgate is a classic example of this. Such a simple thing that he got wrong. And then he held a press conference with the thing drooping off his head. It's as great an outcome as you could possibly ask for. It's as hysterical and as ridiculous as it could possibly be. And it shows you just how utterly unprepared for real life most of these people are. So that's, I mean, and I only say that, I was 90% sure they weren't going to lob missiles at each other because at the end of the day, I just did the strategic math. And, I spend a lot of my time analyzing and playing games when I'm not like doing this shit. Because this is all games analysis and games theory anyway, right? But it's important that, you play high quality games that have depth and that have meat to them. Because they remind you of just how it is that especially if you're constantly playing new games with new rule sets and new symbology and new mechanisms and whatnot all the time. You're not just playing chess over and over again. You're just playing Go over and over again. Not to take anything away from those games. They're fantastic games that I happen to be terrible at. But in playing, an endless, we live in the golden age of board gaming today. And one of the things I find really fascinating is constantly sitting down every Wednesday night when I sit down with my mates and we pick up a game and we put it down on the table for the first time. And almost every week is a learning exercise. And there's a metaphor there for what happens with every geopolitical problem. It's a different set of rules every time. It's a different culture. It's a different people. It's a different set of economic circumstances. It's different personalities. It's all of these things, and you have to constantly reassess them and assess each one that way. You can't just take a kind of one size fits all, what I would like to call an adolescent libertarian view of the whole thing. My biggest problem with most libertarian foreign policy experts is that they take a very they take an ideological stance on the subject, and they're not willing to dig into the meat of it. They're not willing to dig into the realpolitik of it and say, okay, how are you going to get to your preferred solution? And then look at the data and look at the events and go, are we even approaching that optimized solution? And that's generally all I do. And it's hard to maintain your objectivity. It's hard to not get lost in it all. But this is all good, guys. Get them to sit down and talk. You get people in a room together where they can assess each other as men. Very important. Good things can happen. The reason that the foreign policy wonks, the neocons, the MSNBCs, all of them, they don't want Trump and Kim talking is because they know what the outcome's going to be. The outcome's going to be that they're going to lose. They're going to lose North Korea here as a chess piece on the grand geopolitical game board. Okay? It's a big piece. China, Russia, and the Koreans, they all win. The United States doesn't. The United States, from a foreign policy perspective, loses. The American people, they win. Because this depowers one major area of potential conflict. If it all works out. Right. We started the year waiting for World War III to begin. Now that we're 6 months into this, and nearly 6 months into it, and Trump is sitting down with Kim. To end the process. Joanne on YouTube says, I don't hear anybody talking about the meeting of the Asian countries, including North Korea and Vladivostok, where it was clear their minds were made up to unite, develop, and grow. Right. We also had the SCO summit over the weekend, where Putin and Xi not only reaffirmed their strategic partnership, but practically elevated it to the level of alliance. So this is all moving forward, and at the end of the day, this conflict, this divided Korea, is an anachronism, and we can either save face and walk away from this with a kind of a win, which is that Kim gives up his nuclear weapons, which is the way I think this is going to play out. As long as John Bolton is not the one writing the agreement, I think that's the way it'll work out. Trump is going to get a win here. He's going to get denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. It was always on the table anyway. The bigger win is going to be for that entire region. But that was always on the table. Okay. Yeah, William. William says it's all done, but the chocolate cake. No way Trump or Kim would risk a loss. I mean, I don't see how they can either. I don't see how Trump can walk away from this simply because, well, if I don't get a good enough deal, shut the fuck up. You're going to sign something. This is way too important for you to stand on some ceremony of niggling point. Joanne pipes up and says, now that Russia solved their problem of not being a trustworthy ally, they've shown they will step in and defend a threatened ally. See what they did with North Korea? It's how they're going to treat Iran. Why I fundamentally don't believe that we're going to get anywhere, that the whole hard-pressed sanctions regime against... I don't even... At this point, I'm beginning to think that the whole thing is not even about Iran anymore. And yes, that G7 picture was an epic one for the ages. You can do so much with that. I don't know if anybody saw my caption for that picture, but you might want to look through my Twitter feed for it. It's pretty rude. What else? So now that we're talking about that stuff, there's a couple of things I definitely want to talk about tonight. So let me make one more point about Russia and them being a trustworthy ally. Look at the way they've handled Syria. Look at the way they're going to handle North Korea. You do realize that the Russians are the biggest winners out of this North Korea thing, right? Who do you think is going to... Who do you think is going to bring gas, transit, and electricity to North Korea? Got 3 guesses, and there was only one that matters. Russia. Gazprom was in negotiations with the South Koreans about a gas pipeline from Vladivostok in 2011. The deal fell through because the United States forced the South Koreans to say you need to bring it across, you need to bring it underwater and south and bring it in land base and bring it across it to the demilitarized zone, south of the demilitarized zone, bypassing North Korea. That was a non-starter because there's no way that Gazprom could maintain that pipeline and make any money on it. Now that pipeline is going to go exactly the way Gazprom wanted it to go originally, across the land bridge from Vladivostok into North Korea, south through North Korea, into South Korea, all the way down. And they can bring as much gas across there as they want because they've got so much infrastructure that comes into there. It's where the Sakhalin 1 and 2 LNG plants are. No, DTF, U.S. LNG flotillas are not going to bring. I mean, Trump is going to try. That's what my big worry for all of this is, that Trump is going to try and sabotage this by saying that Russia can't be the one to bring in electricity and natural gas and anything else to North Korea. And that's just nonsense. If Kim sells out Russia that way after Lavrov has done most of the diplomatic work behind the scenes to get this fucking thing to where it is today, then we have a new problem. What we're really worried about is losing the market for natural gas to South Korea, Japan, and all that. We've spent billions of dollars on LNG terminals in order to serve those markets because 7-8 years ago, it was necessary. The market needed them. Japanese were paying $14 an MCF for freaking LNG and paying it happily when you can buy an MCF of LNG, of natural gas, pipe gas, for around $3. Okay? Same amount, million cubic foot. MCF, million cubic feet. So, will Korea merge? Who will lead? I don't think you're going to see a merged Korea for a long time. I think you'll see some kind of loose confederation. You'll see a similar border situation over time to something like what we have with Canada. Okay, I think it'll be a free and clear border. I think the two countries will stay separate for a while. They may reunify in some high level in like a diplomatic sense, where there'll be one Korea to act diplomatically around the world. That's very possible, but I think you'll see a loose confederation. If it becomes a quote unquote singular nation, it'll be a loose confederation. And I think that's the right. I think that's just what's going to happen. It's going to take a long time to bring North Korea out of the Dark Ages. It's going to be 15 years. So, it's going to be 15 years. There's a lot of work to be done. There's just a lot of infrastructure that has to be built. But once the process starts, the money can start flowing in. There'll be plenty of investment opportunity for American businesses. But if Trump tries to isolate Russia out of this equation, it'll be a non-starter. Kim will walk away from the table. At least he should. I mean, seriously, he should. And then at that point, Trump will have to call him back and say, all right, fine. Good evening, Maggie. How are you, love? So, I think there's all sorts of good that can come out of this. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think everybody's going to benefit from this. But the big winner from an infrastructure perspective is going to be Gazprom. Gazprom is going to bring in natural gas via natural gas pipelines. They're going to be the ones that build the friggin' power plants, because that's the fastest growing portion of their business. It's like, hey, we can bring gas to you, and we can like set up a power plant right there, and we'll build it, and then we'll do a build, operate, transfer contract with you, and you can have it 50, and you can own it after 15 years, and we've made all our money back, and then we'll move on. And then trains. And then once there's a major rail spur that goes straight through North Korea down to the south, that connects to China and makes the whole Korean peninsula part of the Belt and Road Initiative. I mean, that's what's going on here. That's the big win. That's what the U.S. foreign policy establishment is scared to death of. And the next conflict after that is going to be Japan and Russia. And that's not going to change until Abe's out of power. Suffice it to say, they'll flirt every once in a while with talking, but nothing will come of it until Abe is gone from power. All right. Let's see. Let's talk about what's actually on the title of the program for the evening. Let's talk about Italy. So, how great is Matteo Salvini turning out to be? I was a little worried about this guy during the coalition talks, because I really thought that he might have been trying to like play stalking horse and try to win for his own personal gain. But it turns out that he's the real deal. So is his prime minister. So is his foreign minister. Or not foreign minister, finance minister. They came out this morning and they said, hey, look, we don't want to leave the euro. We're not interested in that. Do I think Japan needs Abe to change the constitution? That's interesting. I'll have to think about that for a second. Maybe. Molto bene. Yeah, no, seriously. I think, well, getting back to I'll have to think about that. That may be the order of operations. That may have to be the order of operations, right? First, Japan gets to change their constitutions, then they can get rid of Abe, and then they can finally turn towards Russia. I don't know, maybe. We'll see. I just don't see anything happening in the next year and a half or 2 years. Salvini is absolutely the real deal. Turning back the Soros ship, closing the friggin' ports, hashtag close the ports. I mean, this guy's serious. And it's awesome because it sets the tone perfectly where, look, we're going to deal with immigration and we're not interested in leaving the euro, at least right now. So why don't we get down to brass tacks about everything else? We're going to start leading. And him going after immigration and stopping immigration now gives them massive political pull, gives them massive political capital to go into hard debt negotiations with the Germans over. It'd be great. And Trump is helping them at the same time. And the more I think about it, and let's talk about Italy real quick. When you start to really look at everything that Trump has been doing vis-a-vis Iran, might have had it wrong earlier. The whole thing might be to put as much pressure on Germany as possible. I'll get back to that in a minute, Maggie. If you really stop to look at everything that's happening right now, everything Trump is doing is putting pressure on Germany to stop being the lords of Europe. If you're going to be the lords of Europe, you're not doing it on our dime. We're going to take away your cheap oil from Iran. You're going to 86 the tariff regimes, or you're going to jump ship and we're going to cut your companies off from our banks. Now, I don't know how much of that is Trump thinks he can get away with threat-wise. Kudlow suffered a heart attack. Wow. Not surprised. Not surprised. Larry's had a rough life. Alcohol, substance abuse. He's at that age. Wow. Let's hope he's okay. Philosophically, I'm not one of Larry's biggest fans, but never want to wish anything like that on anybody. And as far as that goes, he's absolutely one of Trump's most loyal guys. Oh yeah. Yeah. So Godspeed, Larry. I hope you pull through. So yeah, it's rough. A little bit. We talked about Justin's eyebrow earlier. To say all I said, Buckman, about that was that it's a perfect example. It's a perfect metaphor for what happens when you put too much pressure on people who are not capable of handling that pressure. Justin Trudeau is way out of his depth. And having to deal with Trump at a G7 meeting that he misapplied the glue to his freaking fake eyebrows, or he was sweating so bad the thing just fell off. Perfect. Perfect metaphor. Yeah, TX is a real lover. I agree with you that the tariffs were always about Merkel. I'm talking more about putting undue pressure on Iran at the same time while the Italians are trying to form a populist government and Brexit's getting betrayed. It's so obvious that if you start to really look at it, it's very possible that Trump just looked at all of this and said, you know something? Germany is the freaking problem. He's identified from the beginning that Merkel was the problem. He needed to take Merkel down, right? And you don't go after the low-hanging fruit first. You go after the big dog. So he's been going after Merkel since the day he took office. So none of this surprises me. And it's a good thing because the European Union is terrible. But at the same time, in order for the United States to be taken down the number of notches it needs to be taken down in terms of its overseas empire and its undue influence around the world, that Germany and the EU need to break free from the US's control. Okay? Everybody needs to be effectively free. And the Russian-Chinese call for a multipolar world where no one country has the ultimate power of life or death over another country's economy through their currency and debt markets is the right call, is the right way for us to go about it. And you guys are great. I can't even keep up with this one. It's just really fantastic. So it's a bit of give and take here. You've got to pressure Germany into like either shitting or getting off the pot. They either have to cut bait with the United States and lift the sanctions against Russia, craft some kind of settlement with Ukraine. Not that the United States is allowing that to happen, and going forward independently and taking the freaking pain. Okay? Or knuckle under. The European Union is a terrible, terrible, tyrannical thing that needs to go away, Maggie. You and I have talked about this on many occasions. It's not designed to liberate Europe. It's designed to subjugate it. So if the Germans cave to the U.S. pressure, will the Italians be the ones to step up, or will it be the French? I don't know that anybody will step up. The Italians are going to the Italians would have to step up by leaving the euro and then leave the European Union. At that point, they would get everything. They would get all the support in the world from Trump. France? No. France has already surrendered on this one. Macron has already said, well, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, but our companies are going to be allowed to do whatever they want. That's just rolling over and playing dead while making it look like you're putting up a resistance. Total has already pulled out of their deal with Iran. So is Peugeot. So is Periscope. So a variety of others. So don't think for a moment that the French are going to put up any kind of resistance to this. They're not. It really is one of the worst ideas of all time. It could have been a very good idea. Relatively speaking, it could have been a good idea. I'm not a big fan of nation states in the first place. I'm certainly not a big fan of continental-based nation states, right? Joanne says, if Europe wants to be the United States of Europe, then they have to actually do that. Otherwise, it's just become a weird technocracy. It's not a democracy, and it's doomed. It was formed to install peace after World War II, but it's not. It's been designed, but its actual design is to roll up all the wealth to Germany and let everybody else hang. The whole point of the EU, you might as well just call it the Fourth Reich. And I don't say that flippantly. I've been calling it the Fourth Reich for a long time. Well, yes, the French obviously did Iran a favor by not selling the Peugeots because they're terrible cars. Because the French don't make good cars. Please. But intention and execution are two totally different things. The wars of Europe, well, there are many reasons for the wars of Europe. I don't want to sit here and say they happen for one reason or another, because that would be its own multi-hour discussion. But a currency union without a political union is nonsense. And a currency union without consolidation of the debt under one particular thing, under one particular organ issuing the debt, is insanity. Remember, anarcho-libertarian. I want countries of one. You know, one person, one vote, one person. I don't want. I really don't want these. I think the United States is too freaking big. Why does France have so many rivers? Because water takes the path of least resistance. Oh, it's beautiful. I like it. I like it a lot. Best thing that Jonah Goldberg, that fucking asshole, ever said was calling the French cheese-eating surrender monkeys. As an Italian, I just have to laugh. That's just funny. I'm sorry. But well, I mean, I think it'll be absolutely hilarious if the friggin' pesky Italians just turn around and go, you know, this is all just dumb. We're not doing this anymore. Reform or die. Cake or death. Cake. So I know what Merkel wants. Macron wants the same thing. She wants her own military. I know that. They feel that it's like, look, the reason that they want it is, you know, I know that the Germans at this point, I'm sure that they feel that they've gotten financial control of Europe. Now they're going for military control. If User 13 says, if Georgia becomes its own country, I want the Confederate battle flag and peaches on our money. If Florida becomes its own country, I want alligators on the money and nuclear power plants on the flag. Okay, I don't know. Or, you know, I don't know, or South Florida. Just a picture of Miami Beach. That'd be fine. Yeah, I mean, look, an army of hero soy boys. No, that's the problem, William. It's not. It's going to be all those migrants they let in. That's the point. Yep. That's why they want an army. Italy, too, by the way. Spain. We're going to keep everybody in line. Notice what's happening with Brexit, guys. The latest deals that have been put on the table that Theresa May wants to sign are worse than the current deals that they have in place now. Yeah, Tony Montoya on the 100. Nice. I like that. Yep. I like that a lot. I want the Federation of Gulf States. How will Florida vote in the midterms? Red. Very red. Debbie Wasserman Schultz really isn't in charge anymore now. South Florida. Broward County is not going to be able to pull the same shit that they pulled in the past. Red. They're going after Adam Putnam like you wouldn't believe. They're going after Publix. They're going after everybody down here. It's ridiculous. Why do you think that Soros and David Brock have poured so much money into that little faggot David Hogg? It's all about the midterms. They're going to lose like you wouldn't believe. Rick Scott's going to beat Bill Nelson, and Adam Putnam if Adam Putnam hasn't pulled out, which I don't think he has, is going to win, hands down. The guy was a great agricultural commissioner. Seriously, I'm like, I don't follow Florida politics very much, but Putnam was a good guy. Like, as agricultural commissioner, he's great. He's the one that put in all of our what's the word I'm looking for? The pet food laws. It allows us to sell raw dairy under the pet food license. Fucking brilliant. Varoufakis says that EU was designed with Germany as the engine and the surplus state, but Germany didn't implement it that way. No, Germany kept the surplus for themselves and sold everybody debt. Did I like Jeb? No, I hated Jeb Bush. I'm not a Republican. I don't even like Rick Scott very much. We call him Skeletor down here. For German is less. Yeah, we should we should get the Germans and the Scots together and then have them all play poker. No one would ever bet. They would just deal cards and fold. Everybody's in bed with Big Sugar. You can't be a Florida politician and not be in bed with Big Sugar. Jeb was a nothing governor. The Florida legislature runs the country. It runs the state, guys. Okay? It does. It runs the state. Yes, Goldman massage Grease's books. They didn't just massage Grease's books. They just flat out made them up. They didn't massage shit. They just wrote fiction. Do I think Pence is as bad as Cheney? No, Pence isn't smart enough to be as bad as Cheney. We've already covered that. Larry Kudlow. Mark my words, guys. If George Soros lives another 5 years, he's gonna die broke. Yeah, no one will bet until the alcohol-fueled brawl breaks out. Yeah, no, then the Irish will step in and win because they'll still be sober even though they've had half a bottle. I know Pence's deep state. I just don't think he's as bad as Dick Cheney. I'm allowed to say all this stuff because my dad was a New York cop, okay? I don't trust Pence either. I don't trust Pence as far as I'm going to throw him, and he's way too big a man for me to try and throw. And he's just smart enough to be dangerous, but he's not Dick Cheney. You know, calling somebody not as dangerous as Dick Cheney doesn't make him not dangerous. Don't be knocking the Irish on. Oh, I love the Irish. They're fun. But, you know, they like to drink. And there is no love lost between Irish and Italian Americans from New York. None. Zero. It just isn't. No, Trump isn't W. Trump knows. Yeah, exactly. Trump knows exactly who and what Mike Pence is. And that's that. I'm not worried about that relationship. That should be Irish and Russian. Yes, I know he knows about Bolton too. Somebody tried to make the excuse today that I saw that Trump surrounds himself with people that he knows and that in effect that he trusts. That does not, because he's still running a business as opposed to actually running, as opposed to putting good people in place to craft good policy. And that's what his plan is. And I'm like, yeah, I saw it in a tweet, and in the context, I think it was Raimondo who came back and said, look, you know, you can't do that because those guys are the ones feeding him information. And Donald Trump is not a detail-oriented kind of guy. He likes his bullet points. He likes his executive summaries. He's a CEO. He speaks and he communicates in CEO speak. Give me the bullet points. Let's get this meeting over and done with. We don't even need to sit down. This. Okay, I'm making a decision. God created whiskey to stop the Irish from taking over the world. Y'all don't. I'm just really sorry that y'all aren't Italian. There ain't nothing like being Mediterranean, guys, I'm telling you. All right. Let's see. So, last things first tonight. It's almost 9 o'clock, and I wanted to go over some stuff. So, having talked about all of this stuff, and having talked about the fact that I really do believe that we're in the beginnings of the European sovereign debt crisis. You guys know what a credit default swap is? Because we need to talk about the credit default swap. Did you? There you go. See, in New York, that'd get you just shot. In New York in the 50s, that'd just get you shot. That's like West Side Story, Irish and Italian. Okay. But it's a good combination. Because the Italians can't drink very much. I can't drink at all. I have like 2 and I'm done. I don't know. I think the Irish just happen to have like super freaking liver cells or whatever. It's like, ginger Italian kids, that's bad. You grew up near South Philly. I did not grow up near South Philly. I grew up in the suburbs in New York. All right. So it's important when you're looking, if you want to get an idea of what's happening. So you guys know what a credit default swap is and why it's important. Okay. Real quick. We're looking at, and the situation in Italian debt and the European debt in general is a little weird. Because a credit default swap is effectively an insurance contract that you buy annual insurance premiums against a bond that you've bought being defaulted on. So you buy this bond and it pays, say, a 5% coupon, be it a corporate bond, a muni bond, a sovereign bond, doesn't matter. Good evening, the real Roger B. How are you? You buy this bond, you put $1,000 in, you're going to get paid 5% a year on it until it matures, and then you're going to get your $1,000 back. That's the way most corporate and sovereign bonds work, right? So, but if you're worried about the company or the country defaulting on that debt, and at some point over the term of that bond, you can take out an insurance contract against it called a credit default swap, which effectively says you pay a small premium measured in basis points based on the bond, based on the value of the bond, based on what you paid in. So, and then and then that covers you in case the bond defaults, and then they pay you out, and then the guy who sold you the CDS is going to pay you out. It's a derivative contract versus a bond, which is itself kind of a derivative contract because it itself is a promise to pay. So it's a derivative on top of a derivative. Now these things are bought and sold on the market. They rise and they rise and fall in value. But they're all issued in the gray market. They're all issued without any real, or were issued without any real oversight. And no one wanted them to have any kind of oversight in this kind of market. Because they can be used to wag the dog. Like futures contracts can be used to wag the dog of the commodity markets. Because it's a derivative of a real commodity. It's a future promise to pay. It's a promise to pay, deliver a commodity in the future. That's why it's called the futures contract. At a set price. That's a derivative of the commodity. Well, credit default swap is a derivative of a promise to pay bond. Second derivative. Just like an options contract is a derivative of a stock, which is representative of a share in the ownership of the claim against the assets of a company. Okay. So you can buy credit default swaps for very little money, depending on the bond. If you're going to make a big bet against the value of that bond and the potential solvency of the company or the country issuing that bond, you can push CDS spreads wide by buying and selling them on the market or whatever you want to do. You can manipulate the price of them because they're thinly traded. They're quoted at the end of the day by market. It's better than it used to be, but it's still, at the end of the day, if somebody wanted to manipulate the market, this is one way of doing it. And with the amount of leverage that exists within, thank you, Roger, with the amount of leverage that exists within Forex markets, where you can get 100 or 1,000 to 1 leverage in the Forex markets in order to move foreign exchange, bond values and bond yields themselves are a function of the currency, right? Because I'm an American investor. I get paid in dollars. I think I consider my investment in terms of dollars. Well, if I buy a Russian bond, for example, Italian bond, let's just say it's a Russian bond. Let's say it's an Italian bond. Italian bonds denominated in euros. Well, if I buy it when the dollar and the euro are at some exchange rate, and right, as long as the exchange rate doesn't stay the same, then the effective yield on that bond is whatever I paid for it. And then if the bond rises in price, my yield might go up a little bit, and the bond goes down in price, it may go down a little bit. But if the currency if the exchange rate changes, well, at the same time, that's also like the bond rising in value or falling in value, right? Because of a falling currency means you're going to get paid the same number of euros in interest, but those euros are worth fewer dollars, and therefore your yield in dollars is lower. So where you were making 3% of, say you're getting 3% on a bond, and not that getting 3% on you have to go out to 10 years in order to get oh, of course I wouldn't buy an Italian bond. The ECB is the only one buying Italian bonds, but just saying, if this was what you were doing. So when you look at what's happening, right? And I'm going to throw you a picture up right now of what's happening in the Italian bond markets. I finally found a great site that gives me CDS spreads for everything. I didn't know that the site existed until this morning. So, I'm going to pop this up real quick just so you guys can take a look at what's going on. So, this is a year-to-date chart of CDS, of what it would cost you to ensure buying a CDS, buy your payment of a Italian 5-year bond, Italian bond for 5 years. 22 basis points, great. 220 basis points a month later is bad. That's just bad. And this chart should scare you. Now, this, and the interesting part about all of this volatility that's happening now is this is every headline that comes out, we're seeing these move 25, 50, 60 basis points when not 2 months ago, they wouldn't move 2 to 3, 4 basis points over a week. Now, they're moving 60 basis points a day. Now, the interesting part about that is that you're not really seeing much outside of Italy. Spanish CDS spreads aren't moving. Portuguese CDS spreads aren't really moving. Certainly Germany's not. France isn't. So at this point, the market is taking the signal from the ECB and from everybody else that the problem is just in Italy right now, that there's no real contagion. That's a lie. Problem is far bigger than that. And the contagion will start, and you'll start to see it in the CDS markets. Right now, we know that the European Central Bank is pretty much the only buyer of Italian debt. And to scare the Italians last week, they stopped buying Italian debt for a couple of days. And then there was the coordinated statements from a whole bunch of EU officials saying, "See, this is what you get for electing populists. This is what you get. The market's going to, the market's going to punish you if you don't get back in line." And then immediately the ECB had to come back in after a couple of days and start buying Italian debt in order to get it under control. And then since then, with every headline, it's just been up and they're just all over the place. The good news is that right now the Italians are playing possum when it comes to the euro and exiting and all of that. Bad news is that's continuing to create a false sense of security that the ECB has this under control when they don't. They make hawkish statements about how they're going to exit QE. They can't. They make tough statements about, well, if Italy wants to leave the euro, they're going to have to settle up their target 2 balance. Blow me. No, they don't. It's $425 billion, and you're buying more of it every day, Mario Draghi. So you're the loan shark saying, I'm going to continue to buy more of your, I'm going to continue to buy your debt, which you're using to pay off last week's debt. I'm gonna buy this week's debt off of you so you can pay off last week's debt with this week's debt. You're a loan shark. At this point, Draghi is nothing more than an average everyday loan shark, and the fucking Italians know it. The cost of living in Italy is expensive, and there's a reason why it's expensive. It's because the euro is too freaking high. The euro needs to be 80 cents for the Italians to be competitive. So they'll never get out of the trap if they stay in the euro. Either Germany has to leave or Italy has to leave. What has to happen? Giuseppe Conte came out the other day and or Tria, the finance minister, one of them came right out and said, "No, we're not listening to another word of this. If anybody needs to leave the euro, it's Germany. because they are the ones that don't represent the rest of Europe. Why should they collect taxes? Do you understand that the reason why people go around the market, why they go around the regulations, because the regulations don't work for them. It's not about whether they can collect taxes or not. The reason people aren't paying their taxes is because it's better for them not to pay their taxes. The taxes are onerous. They don't want to pay Germany back for this freaking money. This is all about what's going on. This is what's going on at the government level. People are getting fucked here. No matter where you're living in Europe, if you're not living in Germany, you're getting screwed. Maybe the Netherlands, Holland, whatnot. But everybody else within the Eurozone is getting screwed by the Germans. Why Trump's going after them so hard? It's why at a certain level, I can't fault him for putting on steel and aluminum tariffs and threatening Durbanstrang on them for everything. I can't. It makes sense. It's the way to push the Germans into becoming reasonable about the way this has to go forward. All right. The upshoot is I want you guys to start, if you can, the site, you can go to datagrapple.com and you can look at all the CDS spreads for just about everything you want to. Honestly, it's really awesome. And you can continue to, it's not a matter of whether it can pay for anything if it doesn't collect taxes. The Italians collect plenty of taxes. Okay? That's not the problem. The taxes are too freaking high. The government spends more money than they bring in, but they don't spend that much more money than they bring in. The problem is that the currency that all of this is denominated in is so overvalued relative to the value of Italian labor that they can't make it up. They can't work enough hours to generate enough income to pay the debt off, to ever compete with Germany. The Germans work 6 hours a day with an economy that should have the euro at $1, should have a Deutschmark at $1.60 or $2. The Italians have to work 15 or 18 hours a day to make a Deutschmark in relation. Whereas if the lira was at 80 cents or 70 cents, they could work their 8 hours a day and they could export more. The Germans are exporting through mercantilism. They are running the euro as high as it is still cheap relative to the Germans. That's German propaganda, Maggie. It really is. The Germans make this argument all the time. Brussels and the Germans make this argument that everybody in the South doesn't pay taxes and they don't work and they're shiftless and they're lazy, and that's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Germans don't work any more than Italians do. Please, they all get their 6 weeks off in the summertime. They all retire at 55, for fuck's sake. We're the ones working our asses off over here. You go look at average hours worked in the United States versus all of Europe, including the great industrious Germany, and fucking Americans are working themselves to death. It's insane. It's insane, and it all needs to go, and it all needs to end. Germany should leave the euro. They should reinstitute the Deutschmark. Good evening, 33 rule backup. Good evening. How are you? Everything is insane. I mean, everything is insane, and the European Union is going to fail unless it reforms. And the fundamental thing it has to do is it has to consolidate the debt and consolidate debt issuance. And if it doesn't do those two things, which the Germans are absolutely dead set against, because they're the ones who benefit from this system, then they are headed for disaster. and it's disaster that's going to have spillover effects to the rest of the world. And Trump is actually right in trying to push them trying to push Merkel as hard as possible for real reform. Either push them out of the euro or allow the Italians to leave. And the Brits have such a deep state problem that they can't actually institute Brexit. Yeah, no, Joanne, you're absolutely right. This is, I mean, Joanne and User 13 are going on and about how hard Greeks work. It's like it's you know, people work. This whole idea that these, you know, this whole friggin' debt shaming thing is bullcrap. The Germans taking the high moral stance, the moral high ground about how hard they work, and everyone, because we're creditor nation. Yeah, it's easy to be a creditor nation when you have the best industry in the entire Eurozone. Not taking anything away from the Germans for that reason, but you have the best industry, and then you give everybody your credit rating for them to go out and buy debt with, and then wonder why they go out and buy debt with it. Retarded. Okay, it's 9:15. Trump and Kim, I take it, are actually meeting at this point. I should probably go and watch some of that and not sit here and scream at a television, scream at my into my microphone. Okay, important safety tip: watch CDS spreads. I'm going to be watching them carefully from here on out, and again, continue to watch the bond yield, watch bond yields at this point. This is where everything's coming, and we're going to continue to see emerging markets. We're going to continue to see more stories of emerging markets going completely ballistic. Argentina, Venezuela, Brazil, Turkey. Wait, once it reaches Southeast Asia, that's when it's going to get interesting. Okay, we've already had a little bit of a problem with Malaysia because of the ringgit and UNMO getting thrown out of power. But watch Southeast Asia, because once it starts to hit China's backyard, that's when the Chinese are going to seriously start devaluing the yuan, and that's when it's going to get interesting. I've got an article in the editorial at Seeking Alpha right now about this. What's a good outcome for this summit? Real quick, what's a good outcome? That they come to some kind of an agreement, which does not have any secondary considerations. That the United States will that there will be a drawdown, a timeline, equal timeline drawdown of U.S. troops on the Korean Peninsula, including a removal of THAAD and everything else, and the denuclearization of and the shutting down of dismantling of North Korea's nuclear weapons program. I think if those two things happen without any other strings being attached, that's a massive win. That's all we're asking for. All right? Dotard versus the Rocket Man. Both are a lot smarter than people are giving them credit for. Let's see if their own deep states will allow them to make a deal. Okay? All right, you guys have a great night. We'll talk soon. Maybe I'll be back Wednesday morning, and hopefully I'll be on Fault Lines again this week with Lee Stranahan and Garland. I don't know. I haven't gotten an invite yet, but it usually happens like the night before, so I'll never know. I think that that's very possible, Maggie. But there's deep state guys on both sides trying to scuttle that, so we'll have to see what happens. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, you guys take care. You have a great night. Keep your stick on the ice.